today is two wonderful people that I've got to know and call friends. We have Rita Healy, the general manager of the Sheraton, Austin, Georgetown Hotel and Conference Center. I always love saying that, Rita, and thank you for being here. And Rita is joined by David Kellerman, president of Mel's Lone Star Lane and CJ Sports Bar and CJ's Catering. What a great panel we have today for our conversation on dealing with difficult customers. So guys, today's whole conversation is about customer service and how we go with that. So my first question, and David, if it's okay, we'll do a ladies first, is Rita, when we talk about providing excellent customer service, how do you define good customer service?
Thank you, Jim. And I need to have a disclaimer before I start. Everything I'm about to say is my personal experience and my thoughts and feelings on the subject, and are not necessarily the thoughts and feelings of Marriott International. There. Having said and done that, the fundamentals, I think everybody knows, of good customer service. And I think the differentiation is between good and great or excellent customer service. So good customer service is, providing the customer what he wants or needs in an efficient way, and communicating your appreciation for them and making a connection with them. Taking it to the next level, and to back up, good customer service, even great customer service, is really just good manners. When you boil it right down, it's please, it's thank you, it's considering the other person, but taking it to the next level, it's finding a way to anticipate in advance of the guest or customer what they're going to need next. We train to ask our guest or even ourselves, is there anything else I can do for you? Is there anything else I can do for this guest? Sometimes it's as simple as you're delivering an egg dish to a guest at breakfast and asking them if they want ketchup or hot sauce with their eggs, because a lot of people do. And they appreciate you anticipating that and asking that, so they don't find themselves eating their eggs and thinking, boy, I wish I had that hot sauce, and where's a server who I can get hot sauce from? And the guest really ends every interaction by expressing that you've fully served them, that you've taken care of them. And that's usually a simple thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Rita. Great points. Yeah, it's like you said, good manners. I mean, it's sometimes it's these fundamental things that we tend to forget sometimes. David.
Even when the guest isn't conducting himself with good manners.
Great add on there. David, good customer service, how do you define it?
Well, Rita hit it pretty good right on the nose, but to add to that, in that anticipation, here at Mel's, somebody comes up. A lot of times it's obvious that they've never been to Mel's Lone Star Lanes. They may have never even bowled before. Going to the hotel, they may have never stayed there before. They don't know where the ballroom is, where the elevators are at. And it is actually anticipating to show them what they need to do, how to bowl, bumpers, all the little kids, all the adults want bumpers too, right? They don't get them. But to anticipate the little kids are going to need bumpers and to set them up for success. As Rita said, with manners, but it's with a genuine smile on your face. You got to hire the right people. They got to believe in your product and your business. If you have that person who's your frontline first contact of your business, who cannot smile, who cannot speak to people, you really need to replace them with somebody who can get the job done correctly.
Yeah, first impressions make a big difference, David, and that's a great point. I mean, you might have, you walk in with expectations of what it is, and if it's a little bit different, it's confusing, and sometimes, as Rita said, you don't want to ask those questions. So great point. So David, I'm gonna stick with you and just kind of piggyback off this, good customer service, and how do you track any customer interaction? You mentioned the employee that might not be the right fit. How do you track customer interactions and guest satisfaction? I kind of put those two together.
Us personally, we don't do very much surveying after the fact. We do a lot of table touches. There'll be management or supervisors going to customers, seeing how they're doing, if they need anything, and what their experience is like. Of course, we monitor all social media, Google posts, etc., and see how that reacts. But we have used mystery shoppers in the past, and we'll use them in the future again. It's not a constant thing that we do, but there's plenty of companies out there who you can hire. You set them up to come in and experience your business, and they get back with you on how your personnel did, how the product was, etc. If you don't want to go to a great expense, just hire some friends that are not regulars to your business. Tell them exactly what you want them to do. Give them the money to come on in and purchase whatever that product may be, and they can get back with you on how that experience went.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Rita, I know with your organization, guest interactions and things might be a little bit more tracked. Any thoughts on that topic, Rita?
Well, we do have obviously a formal survey system that's company-wide. But aside from that, which is very much a lagging report. So I'm only finding out about that guest stay after they've left. When I no longer have an opportunity to recover anything negative that might have happened. But we do end of shift reports as well that the front desk does, the restaurant does it, the loss prevention department does it. So we pass on information about guests, both positive and negative, that other people in the hotel need to know about interactions that we've had with them. It may help us provide better service going forward. It may alert us to a guest who's particularly sensitive about a specific subject like masks, as a great example. But it's important when we're looking back to do that with the perspective of what can we learn and what can we do better, as opposed to who did something wrong.
Well, I think that's great, Rita, and that the timeliness of those end of the shift reports allows you to quickly uncover maybe some trends that you're not wanting to see about a guest or overall service. And I love the term recover, and we'll talk a little bit about that, how to recover from bad customer service or in disrupted guests. So, we got an idea of what customer service is, and we kind of talked a little bit about tracking. So I love those answers. Sometimes it's, guys, it's the delivery of the message. And a lot of this is, these conversations that we're hearing revolve around policies and guests communicating policies over, or employees communicating policies over to a guest. Any tips or thoughts on how to ensure your frontline people are properly ready to discuss some of these policies? And I'll start, Rita, I guess with you if you want, or David, if you want to jump in, I'll let Rita go first and we'll kind of go that plan of action.
Sure. It's a very, very important training topic. First of all, you have to make sure they understand the policy itself and why. Why are we asking guests to wear masks? Why are guests not allowed to eat outside food and beverage in the lobby? And then work with the employee. And forgive me if I use the term associate from time to time. It's habit. It means the same thing. Give them some sample verbiage so they know how to say what you're asking them to say. You want them to do it in their own style and be themselves, but not so much themselves that they say something inappropriate or just offensive to the guest. You want to coach them not to debate the issue with a guest ever, or try to change the guest's mind about whether it's masks or anything else, and to set aside their personal feelings. So there's a lot of coaching that goes into it. These are still our customers, our guests, and we have to treat them with courtesy and with patience. And then, of course, you want to follow up and make sure that the messaging is going well and whether we need to make any adjustments to how we're communicating.
Yeah.
Rita hit it on the nose with training. You got to train. Role playing is really good. Going offline, have a training session, have a few of your employees, as Rita said, them knowing what that policy is about is so important. Just for them to rattle off the policy and not buy into it, it's not going to work. But then role play on different interactions with an angry customer, with a knowledgeable customer, etc. So they understand how to deliver it in their own way, as Rita said. Great points, Rita.
So David, piggybacking off that, and one of the questions I was thinking about that is that we talk about, we've heard the word policy, and be yourself. How do you separate or train employees to deal with these situations and understand their personal opinion versus a policy decision, in kind of working that direction? How do you balance the personal choices versus a policy choice?
It's always putting ourselves in the customer's shoes, and we train as such, to sit back, listen. What is the guest saying? And then asking yourself, where did the customer get that idea? Where are they coming from? And then put on their shoes, and there can be a give and take most of the time. Mr. Doe, I'll be happy to take care of you this time by doing it this way, but to let you know in the future visits, we will not be able to provide that. This is our normal standard policy.
So definitely some give and take sometimes when, dealing with difficult customers on that end, David. And Rita, thoughts on the personal versus policy, kind of the balance on that end?
It's, David's absolutely right. It's important to find a middle ground whenever possible, whenever it's not a do or die kind of policy. I coach so many people in so many situations to take things seriously, but not personally. So every employee needs to communicate from a policy position, not a personal position. This is not your personal problem. You're just conducting business. Avoid words like enforce, comply, mandate, which are just going to be incendiary to the customer or the guest. And express that you understand their opinions or feelings about what you've told them they can or can't do. And try to find a way to say no by offering an alternative instead. That's a very big hospitality point. I'm sure David will agree. We try to avoid saying, no, you can't do that. We say, this is what you can do. You can eat that food in your guest room.
Wonderful. Yeah, I agree. It's I have, as Rita knows, I have a hospitality background, and I think you very rarely do use the word no, but you provide some alternatives that might lead to the area. Guys, again, we're joined by David Kellerman and Rita Healy. We do have a Q&A feature that you can ask questions, and we'll gladly get to those. Y'all are both presidents and general managers of that, but not all the interactions come directly with you. How do you suggest to a frontline employee when the appropriate time is to seek a supervisor or manager? Because it's not personal, but there's training, as David said. When do you suggest that they stop and say, you need to speak to my supervisor or manager? Some balances on that end. Whichever one y'all want to go first this time. I won't force whoever goes. I'll let somebody David, you look like you're going to talk, so I'll say David Kellerman.
I try to train them to not even say that, to say, let me go get my manager, let me get my supervisor. I ask them to excuse themselves. Excuse me. Hold on one second. I'll be right back. Grab a manager, grab a supervisor, bring them up, and let them get interaction right off the bat. Whenever that particular employee associate feels that they cannot handle it from that point, that is past anything that they say, it's time just to get somebody above them involved with the situation.
Rita,
I think there's a couple of times when an employee would need to bring in a manager or supervisor. Anytime that a guest is shouting or becoming extremely confrontational, no hourly employee should have to deal with that. That's why we're here. As leaders, as owners, as managers, is to support them in that way. They need to be trained to do everything in their power to prevent it getting to that point. They also, employees also need to learn to manage their emotions and recognize when they're getting to a point where they can no longer conduct this interaction without getting angry themselves. They need to pay attention to their internal feelings. When I was a front desk manager years ago, I would tell my employees, if somebody starts to get you to that point, or somebody starts to raise their voice, physically take a step back from the desk, and the guest will go, what's going on? Why did they do that? You're literally making a physical space between yourself and the other person that says, I'm disengaging. I'm disengaging. And it's going to cause the other person to pause and slow down and realize what they're doing. But it's very important for them to realize when their own emotions are escalating to the point that they're about to contribute to the confrontation. And then, I'm going to step away and see if there's someone who can assist you better.
I like that. I like both of those wordings. And, because once you say manager, owner, it gives, I don't know, to me, it gives them the ammunition also to that person sitting there fueling up a little bit more. And so when that person comes back, they're ready just to start all over at a higher level of anger and frustration. And so I imagine y'all both have experiences where people getting pretty frustrated in your lobbies and your alleys. How do you keep that from impacting, I'm going to say making a scene, but also with impacting your other guests in the area? How do you, it's that de-escalation, but how do we keep this from impacting other guests? And then if maybe when the other guest is impacted as well, how do you work through that whole avenue?
Well, frankly, I find some people want the extra attention, not a lot. And I think this is an important point, is we get very focused on the guest or the customer who is a problem. But in my experience, that's 1 in 500, 1 in 1,000. And it's very important that we figure out how to deal with that guest, but we don't lose sight of the other 999 who are amazing. We're really, really fortunate to live in Central Texas, where people are appreciative, they're courteous, they're considerate, they're understanding, and we have to focus on that people are primarily good, especially here in Central Texas. And I can tell you, I've lived some places that's not true. But when other guests see somebody escalating a situation and being unreasonable, they turn out to be pretty empathetic, and they're even more supportive in their next interaction. I had that happen to me during the snowstorm. A guest she had a lot of small children, and she lost her temper. And when she walked away, the couple behind her looked at me and she said, "We are going to be the nicest customers you ever had, and you're going to do the best job for us you've ever done." and that's what we really deal with here in Texas a lot. People are very understanding, but you need to let those people blow off steam. Sometimes they won't let you walk away from other guests to deal with it. You need to let them blow off the steam and then gently remind them, I'm the person who can help you. I'm the person who's going to find a solution for you.
Rita hit it right on the nose in regards to those really loud customers. I've learned to, if you come out from behind the desk and you don't have your arms crossed, you're not defensive, you're not turning red, and you can stand there and let the individual yell, speak loudly, say what they want to say, listen intently, they will run out of steam very shortly. And then at that point, you can say, okay, let me understand, this is your issue. Let me see if I can resolve it. And then take it from there. Typically, they'll calm down pretty quickly if you will let them yell. If you try to interrupt them, try to correct them, try to stand your ground, it's a no-win situation.
So David, that's a great segue, because I was sitting here thinking a lot of this is listening. It's getting in a position to listen. It's a simple question. Any tips on being a better listener? I think my wife will tell me I need to. So I'm taking notes right now, David. So whatever tips you have, but any tips on, being a good listener in those situations. And if you have questions, guys, feel free to throw them into the chat feature, and we'll get to those. I see Craig Henry has a question, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but take advantage of that Q&A section, guys. So David, tips on listening.
It is getting face-to-face. It's if somebody else is walking up to you or you got a phone call, put it to the side. I can't take it right now. I can't talk to them right now. And giving that person 100% of your attention. If it's a couple, you gotta concentrate on the person talking to you, but you also need to glance at the other individual once in a while to make sure that, one, they're on the same page as whoever's speaking, but that you're recognizing both of them and that you're going to satisfy the group as a whole. But it is looking them in the eyes and giving them 100% of your attention. That's best and easiest way. If you have a notepad and a pen with you, if you need to take down notes at the same time, do that.
Rita?
David's absolutely right. That is what an unhappy customer wants, is your attention, and your full attention. He's absolutely right. And anybody who's ever visited me at the hotel knows that I carry around a notepad all the time. And I tell everybody, did you see me write it down? Because if I didn't, I probably don't remember it. I also coach my employees, especially at the front desk, to filter out the delivery and listen for the message. Somebody's screaming at you, but somewhere in there is the real reason he's upset. Guest is yelling at me because his room isn't ready. His real reason he's upset is because he needs to take a phone call and he needs some privacy. So maybe I can't get him into his guest room, but maybe I can find a place for him to take that phone call in privacy. So really, really listen, not to the screaming, but the message. Don't assume you know why the guest is behaving the way that they are. Don't try to assign a motive, because the minute you do, it shuts down your ability to hear them clearly.
Awesome.
And of course, empathize. Absolutely empathize. Even if you don't agree, you can communicate that you understand their position.
Great things. A lot of it's listening, good manners, giving the 100% of your attention. You're doing this, we're hoping that the situation gets de-escalated. When do you ask them to leave? There's sometimes when you figure out there's not going to be a solution to this problem. I know that's not where you want to be, but walk us through maybe some delivery on that, or thoughts on that section of it, because I know nobody wants to get to that point, but it has to happen. And I think with what we're seeing, there's going to be times when people are arguing, but at the end of the day, it's that policy says that you can't be in the building right now, and I need you to leave. Any thoughts on that messaging, guys? Or
they need to be fair warned. Look, we're getting to a situation. If you don't settle down, if you don't put away that, that attitude and so forth, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. And I don't want to do that. I want to try to settle this. If they continue and you get to that point, it's simple as that. Do not, you can't grab them by the arm to escort them out. You can just, you can't do that. Just if it gets to that point, then the Georgetown Police Department needs to be there. But give them the fair warning that if they can't settle down, they're gonna have to leave.
And David, before Rita, I give you an opportunity. That kind of goes back to what Rita said earlier. You're warning them, but reminding them also that you're the one that can find a solution for them. Yeah. You're truly trying to find a solution for this, but we're getting to that warning stage. Rita, any comments on that?
Well, the number of times that I've actually had to ask somebody, and I've been doing this for a few years, but the number of times I've actually had to ask somebody to leave the hotel I could probably count on one hand. So you can imagine how serious a situation has to be before I do that. But it's always, I agree exactly with David's language. I want to be able to keep you as a guest, but if you will not do what I'm asking you to do, then you will have to leave.
Yeah. It's pretty rare here at Mel's too. that we have to ask anybody to actually leave the premises.
Guys, a real quick question that came from the group before I kind of move on is, a lot of this feels like it's dealing with good customer service and finding employees that can help with good customer service. The chamber is offering a chamber university in about a month about hiring and finding good employees, but any tips during the interview process that you would share for the group on identifying a employee with good customer service?
I try to get them to tell me stories. The open-ended question, of course, is critical in an interview. So tell me about the worst customer interaction experience you ever had. Somebody you just could not turn around. Tell me about that. And listen to their language. If they sound sincerely regretful and feel like in their mind it's still not resolved, I just haven't given up. What could I have done differently? What could I have done better? That's a great customer service associate. The one who says, this guy was just such a jerk. And no matter what I said to him, okay, the minute he said jerk, he didn't get the job.
Yeah. Exactly. And then role playing in the interview as well. We try to do group interviews where we have at least 3 to 5 applicants in the room at the same time. It may not be for the same position, but then we do some role playing and you see how they interact. And of course, checking their references. I know a lot of people say you call another company and they're just going to give you a canned answer. Yeah, maybe if it's a corporation, but if you were to call up here at Mel's and ask about one of my past employees, I'm going to give you the skinny. If they were not a good employee, I'm going to let you know.
Thanks both. That's a great information. So Craig, I hope that helps you out there. Guys, a lot of this interaction has been discussed in person, but sometimes people are a little bit afraid to have those conversations and they like to call you on the phone and do that. How many of these tips can switch over to a phone conversation with an irate customer, maybe during the booking process or post event? Any tips from a phone side or maybe how you handle things a little bit differently?
If you're blindsided, not expecting the call, don't know anything about the situation, of course, the best thing is to listen, write everything down, explain to the guest that you need to look into it and that you will call back at a certain particular time, and you keep your promise. You call them back by that time with the information. If the situation is such as shouldn't be resolved over the phone, ask them to come on in. Hey, come on in. Let me buy you lunch and let's sit down and let's discuss it. And let's get things resolved. Usually I do know about the situation and I have my facts in front of me, but I want to hear their side of the story because I just heard it from my employees and they may say something that may be truthful, it may be totally false, but I'll listen to what the guest says, and it goes back to that give and take. If by what they're saying on the phone, I can resolve easily by giving them something, I usually will do so.
Rita?
I agree very much with David about being prepared and trying to get all the information in advance if you have that opportunity. And David, you may have had this experience too. If you're calling somebody who's upset about something, plan on it taking twice as long as you expect it to take. If you think it's going to be a 10-minute call, it's probably going to be 20. And you need to give it that time because now it's after the fact. And I do exactly what David just said. I always ask the guests, tell me about your experience. I have some of the information, but I want to hear what you experienced in your own words. And that gives them a chance and the opportunity to blurt out everything that's on their mind and in their heart. And that helps me understand how they truly feel about the situation, where they are with it. And like I said earlier, to blow off some steam, and then they can get to a place where they might be a little bit more reasonable and easier to talk to.
Wonderful. Thanks, Rita. So, we talked about phone and that social media is a really hot thing right now. I don't know if you've heard of, there's things called Facebook and it's really popular right now with everybody. But people, that's an opportunity for people to do another level of venting and do that. Any tips on interacting with guests or previous guests on social media and some best practices maybe on that end?
I do not ever get into any detail on a social media review or response to social media review or Facebook. It's an apology. I'm sorry that you had that experience. That's not our standard for service. I hope you'll come back. If it's something very specific and very serious, I invite them to contact me personally, and I give them my email address or my office phone number so that they can reach out to me personally. But yeah, to start a dialogue over social media, that's a Pandora's box.
I agree 100%. Facebook, you can message them, so it's a one-on-one, but same scenario as Rita said, I give them my phone number, I give them my email address. Please contact me and let us discuss that. If you go to Mel's Facebook page right now, you'll see a stream about our mask mandate, and got a lot of thumbs up. Got a few negative comments, got a lot of positive comments. And we did a little investigation. All the negative comments, my employees, our staff do not recognize the people. All the positives are our regular bowlers here at Mel's on Star Lane. So, going into the face mask real quick, I think there are trolls out there just trying to stir things up a little bit. Personal opinion.
No, and I can appreciate that, David. I think there's a lot of part of the reason we had this conversation to talk about de-escalating and good customer service, because I think it comes down to that, is when this was announced, there was a lot of people that had a lot of concerns over what they were anticipating going to take place in their lobbies and restaurants on Wednesdays. And I think what we're hearing today is a lot of this is, training, making sure your employees understand the policy, making sure that they can deliver the message that's not personal, that they're willing to listen, but they also know when to step away and get another personal level. But also sometimes there's not solutions that work. I mean, if this is like you mentioned outside food, Rita, sometimes there's a solution that might not work for everybody in that. So, with that being said, one of our questions comments in the Q&A was regarding the customer isn't always right, potentially. Any thoughts on the old cliche of the customer is always right? I personally don't think that is correct, but is that part of your training? Is there any time where you just have to recognize that? Thoughts on the customer always right?
The customer is not always right, but we can make them feel like they're right. There again, it's just that give and take. Rita pointed out about Central Texas and Georgetown and our guests here in town. There are not that many people in town that are looking for something for nothing. Usually when they have a complaint, it is legitimate in their mind, and we just have to resolve it. But there again, the customer's not always right, but just find a way to make them feel like they're right.
I agree, the customer's not always right, but they are always the customer. And we have to keep that in mind and treat them that way, and treat them with the courtesy and the dignity that every customer and every person deserves. And as I said, try to find a way not to say no, but to say, let's do it this way instead.
So piggyback kind of off, we were talking about, David, you mentioned we never win on social media, you never thing. We were talking about earlier about de-escalating situations to keep a larger audience to come in. Any experience with, Rita, you're talking about the guests at the snowstorm that was, hey, we're going to have great customer service. Has there any situations where you felt like I'm not going to say it becomes a group negative mentality towards the situation? They are getting that. Have you experienced that before? And any thoughts on that? So basically, instead of just one upset guest, you now have 5 to 10 and a balance on that end.
I did have a situation where guests tried to pile on. And it was a situation when I was in Tucson around the pool. And the only way that I could handle it was to excuse myself from the primary guest and say to the secondary guest, I would very much like to have your contact information so that you and I can have a one-on-one conversation like I'm doing with this gentleman right now.
Gives again, it goes back to listening, and as David mentioned, giving each person their time during it. And if you, it's difficult to do when you have two different people with two different. I mean, they might be having the same thing, but they're not a party. They're two different people on that end. And guys, remember the Q&A feature is here for additional questions. David, any comments on that? You know, maybe a bowling team, they would never be upset, you know, but I just, any thoughts?
I've had groups. It never seems to be the whole group. They may walk up physically together, but it's typically just one person, maybe two, who have an issue of what the other people are there sort of supporting them, but yeah, whatever. And just like Rita, you pull the key people to the side, talk to them individually and try to resolve it. We've never really had an issue with a large group, no, fortunately.
Good to know. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's again, coming back to listening. Guys, specific to the mask ordinance, just a question, is there signage, anything that's been helpful for your business that you would share with the group that you felt like is, you know, prevented people from being shocked by a notice? David, you mentioned posting on social media, you know, again, preparing people for what they're expecting when they get there. Any tips on, you know, that specific or another policy that you're like, hey, this is what to anticipate when you do arrive at our location?
To post it on your website, social media, if you're doing that, particularly the mask ordinance, is fair warning to them. You know, they don't like it, they don't have to come. We put new signage on our doors. Took the old type of signage people would put on their storefronts: no shirt, no shoes, no mask, no service. Be happy to send that to anybody. They just have to email me, david@melzonestarlanes.com, and I'll send them the basic format. They can just put in their own logo and post it on their doors.
Yeah, I think, again, prepping people in advance, David, helps them make a logical decision. I put that in quotation before they arrive. Rita, any tips on your side for providing proper awareness before an arrival?
We're really doing a lot of the same things for guests and customers who are local and are not necessarily making a reservation for a hotel room. We're doing our best to make sure that it's on our websites. We have signs on the doors. I'm literally using some of the same signs and moving them around. So if you were here last week, it might be in a different place so that you know I didn't just forget to take it down. The policy still applies. But for guests who are making reservations, we have red banners on our reservation website advising them.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys.
We've made no changes at all to our social distancing, our occupancy limitations, or our mask policies.
Wonderful. And I think we're hearing that from a lot of businesses that they've maintained similar or the exact same policies that they had prior to that and are reviewing the situation for what they're going to do in the future. Guys, we're coming up on the closer to the hour, and I'm just curious as we start to wrap up this conversation, you know, if any ending thoughts on customer service. You know, I mean, it is a skill that you have to work on, as David said, with the role playing. It comes naturally more than others. But any just tips that you would share, not for an employee, but maybe for other businesses, you know, that maybe think they're the only one getting that irate customer, the only one getting that irate group of people. Any tips or just closing thoughts that you would share with our audience today?
When I thought through this, you know, it's fine for me to talk about, like when we were talking about when to get a manager or supervisor involved. Some of the people who are on the call may run a business that's very small and there's only one employee in the store or location when they end up having this interaction. And that's when, you know, as we talked about interviewing, it's really, really critical to choose that employee for their maturity and their experience, and to not leave someone who's poorly prepared facing that situation on their own. And then, review with them what their options are when they do encounter a customer like that, and continually learn from that employee about what challenges they're experiencing when they're there by themselves, and eliminate as much friction as you can for them when you aren't immediately available.
Rita, I think that's some excellent comments there that, going back to realizing that you both are a little bit larger operations with multiple staff in the building at all times, but there's a lot of companies that it's one or two people, and that interviewing, and then what is the next step? When do you can't go ask a manager, but when do you go to that next level on that end? David, thoughts?
On top of that, the chamber offers so many opportunities from B&L, breakfast links and all that, to get to know other business owners. I've got a group of friends. Whenever one of us has a question about PPPs, masks, whatever, we can call on each other and bounce things off of each other. And I'm not talking other bowling, I'm talking other businesses here in Georgetown. Get to know, if you're new to Georgetown, get with Jim, get with the staff. They'll contact some other businesses. Y'all can get together, have your own group. You have that phone call, and if it's only to bounce something off of them after everything's done, just to get it off your chest, that will help you out. But if you can put somebody on hold, give somebody a call and ask what they would do in this situation. If you're not sure, that's what we're all here for, to help each other out, to make sure we all succeed and enjoy what we do.
Wonderful. Double checking our last questions. I don't see any more questions coming through, guys. David and Rita, thank you so much for joining us today on our virtual Chamber Power Hour. Again, we put this together after hearing from our members who are looking for some tips and tricks on better customer service and really just de-escalating situations. I found it interesting. It's a great refresher on what we can do. And I appreciate both of y'all's expertise and time today during the conversation. Again, I will remind our members that we have a full event calendar at georgetown.chamber.org. And as I previously mentioned earlier, the Chamber recognizes that many of your supervisors, line employees, managers, and owners are looking for additional training. And so the Chamber's Workforce Development Alliance through the Chamber's Chamber University, say that 3 times fast, has put together a very successful, we're going to say it's already successful, even though it hasn't, a great plan of action for a 3-part program focused on customer service, successful leadership, and interviewing, hiring, and firing. We've heard that those 3 tips, those 3 areas are things our members are looking for. So if you know an employee or yourself that's interested in attending that 3-part series, it'll start taking place April 1st. $35 gets you all 3 of the training. So what a great value that we're willing to offer to our members. David and Rita, again, thank you so much for being here. For those attending, we will be reaching back out to you with some follow-up information. Have a great day. Enjoy the spring weather. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.